Mi chamocha bailim Adonai. Mi chamocha nedar v'godeh.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to Wisdom and Torah. And I'm excited that you guys have taken some time to join us again this year for this year's Torah cycle. And as you can see, we've gone back to doing video portions for the 2014-2015 cycle, as opposed to what we did last year with doing the 30-minute nuggets. We tried to cover as much as we possibly could in 30 minutes, but as many of you all know, what we've been doing here for the last three years now, studying the ancient Near Eastern perspective, a lot of times 30 minutes just isn't enough. So I'm extremely excited that we're going to do videos again. We're going to keep them to a minimum of an hour, hopefully, which I don't know how I'm going to do this portion in an hour, because we're going to be talking about a very, very large topic, and one that is very dear and special to me because it's something that I've never seen before. Today we're going to be going through Genesis chapter 1, and the portion ends in chapter 6, verse 8. Now, we're not going to be able to go through all of those verses, obviously, because an hour just simply is not enough to go through 6 chapters. But we're going to give a consensus on what this Torah portion is about. And I'm going to try to give you as much information as I can as possible, because we're going to be talking about today the macro temple of Yahweh in the cosmos. Now, I know this is kind of a new topic, and it's going to be a little bit of a different perspective than we're used to hearing, specifically within chapters 1 and chapters 2 of Genesis. And those are the areas that we're going to focus on, because I think now that we are so far removed from understanding the environment of ancient culture, that we kind of developed these ideas over the years and over the centuries of implanting ourselves within the text and trying to make the text say what it doesn't actually say, and all these various ideas get taught down through the centuries. And as you all know, what we've been doing for the last 3 years, which I can't believe this is our 3rd Torah cycle of teaching the ancient Near Eastern perspective, absolutely amazing. Extremely grateful to our King for allowing us to see all of the various areas of Scripture in the Torah that we haven't seen before, because we all here at the website and who are part of Wisdom and Torah, we have chosen to go back and study the culture, the language, and everything that is tied into the time frame in which the Scriptures were written. So what are we talking about as far as a macro temple? When we say that, macro has to mean that this is it's the prototype. It is the number one pattern, and everything else that follows after it is a micro temple. So we know that the temple on earth is a microcosm. You've heard Rico talk about that. I've talked about that. So we know that there's many, many microcosms and micro shadow pictures of things that are in the heavenly realm. With that being said, when we make that connection, then we have to make sure that we investigate not only the earthly temple, but also how his temple is conceived in the cosmos. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that the people in the ancient world didn't look at what we're going to look at as a mean of a creator, as, well, what was the form and the material that creation was made of. Everybody in the ancient Near East believed that there was a creator. Okay, they didn't want to know what the stuff was that made up the universe or made up their environment, what made up the cosmic temple, what made up the universe. They didn't care what made up, what material objects made that up. They were more concerned was what was the function of everything, and who was the God that ran the universe, who ran the cosmos, because they all believed that their gods had their macro temple was set up within the cosmos, and how everything from that portrays to how things are set up on earth. Now we see, and the reason why I think this is absolutely essential that we study this, I mean, not only is it because we've been taught that Genesis 1 is a modern day Christianity versus evolution or those type of ideas, which was never meant to be, but if we understand that there is a connection between the earthly temple and the heavenly temple, and if we can understand how things were done in the earthly temple, then we can see how much deeper the work of Yeshua and what Yah has sent him to do for us in order to restore us back into the covenant. Okay? So, we're going to kind of talk about as much information as we possibly can. I'm going to be actually teaching this at Sukkot. I'm pre-recording this prior to you watching it, so I'm getting ready to leave for a Sukkot gathering in the next few days where I'll be teaching this full series and talking about the entire connection between Genesis 1, 2, and 3 and linking it all the way through the Brit Hadashah and the first century writings and showing all of the various ideas and everything that connects to the macro temple in the cosmos. So I'm going to post that teaching up, and the full PowerPoint will be with that, and we're also going to begin to record this as a separate 4 to 6 hour series. We have 80 some slides. I have 80 slides in this PowerPoint, and it's evident we're not going to be able to get through these in an hour. So kind of bear with me as we are going to go through as much as we can, but I want to make sure that I give you guys the resources. Now, hopefully you can see pretty well on the projector behind me. We've tried playing around with the lighting here in this facility that we're using. We've actually been messing with it for about an hour and a half prior to it, and we just can't seem to get everything to where it's perfect. So bear with me. Hopefully you can see everything pretty well on the projector behind me. And the resources that I've used throughout this topic, ladies and gentlemen, I've been studying this for about 6-7 months now, and this topic has literally blown me away. Just like everything else that we've done, instead of us, like I said earlier, implanting ourselves within the text and trying to make the text fit our culture, we have to put ourselves into the text and see how the ancient people believed and see how they saw these things, and literally turn over every verse, turn over every word, and investigate it from its proper culture. Okay? And a lot of these resources that I've been reading and studying for this topic, they do just that. Now, we can't agree with everything that they talk about, obviously, but these are excellent, excellent resources. And the first one is the Zondervan Illustrated Bible Background Commentary. We've been using that for the last few years, going through all of the Torah portions. Very, very excellent resource. John Walton is the editor of that. His other books that I've been using for this topic on ancient cosmology is The Lost World of Genesis 1 and Genesis 1 as Ancient Cosmology. Now, the difference between those two books is the blue one that you see on the screen, which is this one right here, is a little bit more of a more in-depth and harder read than The Lost World of Genesis 1. The Lost World of Genesis 1 is broken up into propositions that he presents, and it's really a nice, easy read, and everything is explained really, really well, and we're going to make connections that John doesn't. See, John Walton has been the expert in the last 10, 20 years on this topic of ancient cosmology and recognizing that Genesis is speaking about Yah's temple in the cosmos. But, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, he hasn't been able to recognize that Torah is valid for today. So now you and I are going to be the ones that are going to take Yah's message of Genesis 1 being his temple and setting up his temple in the cosmos to all of those who believe in the Torah and all of those who hold the testimony of Yeshua the Messiah. So we have an additional responsibility attached to our mandate to do this. And I know this, like I said, this is a little bit of a different topic, but please allow me the opportunity to present the evidence to you and show you in the text on a little bit different than we've been taught. Okay? Now, in most areas, I'm going to give you some quotes that John Walton has said in his books, and they ring very, very, very true. Okay, and one of them, he says, in most areas there is more similarity between Israel and its neighbors than there is between Israel and our 21st century Western world, which it makes absolutely sense. A lot of sense, because we've already seen throughout the 2 years prior to us studying the ancient Near Eastern context that they have a lot of similarities within the cultures and the nations surrounding them. Does that mean that Yah is using something pagan? Absolutely not. But you have to keep in mind that two of the major themes, and we know there's many themes and backdrops behind Scripture, but two very, very major themes that are going on within the text is that Yah is using everything He can to establish His justice and righteousness as the only king who establishes justice and righteousness, not these other kings. And then the other concept is honor and shame. Okay, remember that all of the other gods did everything they could to basically lift up their own honor and dishonor other kings in the process of them doing that. So everything that Yah is doing all throughout Scripture and all throughout history is Him showing the world, even those of the nations and those of the peoples that weren't Israel. He's showing everybody that He is the one true righteous king who commits justice and righteousness, not the other ones. And the other one is that He is the one who has created everything. He has established everything. He has given everything its function. And He is the one who has done all these things. He is the one who has acquired and ascribed the honor for Himself. He's already done it by His acts. Okay? All these other people and all these other nations, they believe that their deities acquired and ascribed this honor to themselves by doing all these things. So Yah is doing everything that He can to show everybody that He is the one true sovereign and He is the one who's done all these things. Okay? So with that being said, that's why we see so many similarities that we have looked at in the past between the Hittite kingdom, the Assyrian kingdom, the Babylonian kingdom, the Mesopotamians, all of these things that were similar to what Israel was doing. It's because the message of covenant of Scripture transcends culture, but the message of the covenant is culture bound. And this is another quote that I've kind of altered that John Walton said in a teaching that I recently watched that he said, but he, like I said, he didn't talk about the covenant. He's talked about the message of Scripture transcends culture, which means that that message goes from the time in which it was written in our Scripture, and it transcends and it carries through, and it's valid through every single generation until it gets to you and I, and until we get to Messiah returning, and until we get through the millennial reign. It transcends the culture. Okay, that means that the culture is changing, but the message and the covenant does not change. Okay, but the structure and the form of how that message and covenant was established is bound to the culture because it was given to a specific people. It wasn't written to us, or it was written to a specific people with a specific mindset, okay, and a specific culture and a cognitive environmental worldview. That means that they had a worldview of how things were established, how they were ran, which deity set up His temple in the cosmos, and who was running the cosmos. Because all of the things that was run in the cosmos transcends down into the earth, and that's how they have the shadow and everything on the earth. Okay, so because the Scriptures are written for us and not to us, and the definition of terms are culturally determined. So that means that we have to go back and look at, okay, how is Genesis 1 written? Because it's using terms and a language that is culturally bound, and those terms and definitions were shaped by the culture in which they were used in. I'm hoping this is making sense. Allow me some time to present this, okay? And we don't have a lot of time, but... Okay, the conceptual worldview and cognitive environment of ancient cosmology. What exactly is ancient cosmology? How did the ancient Near Eastern people view these type of things? How did they perceive the things of the cosmos? Now, the sole purpose of this study, guys, is basically to establish the Bible as a temple text, beginning with the establishment of Yahweh's temple in the cosmos at the very beginning of Genesis 1. And then if you go all the way to the end of the entire Bible, ending in the book of Revelation, in chapter 22, we see that it is dealing with the restored temple in the cosmos after the millennial kingdom. So we're going from the macro temple being set up in Genesis 1, 2, and 3, and then which we see in this Torah portion. Now, before I get back to Revelation, now just check this out. In just this Torah portion alone, we're going to see that the temple is being formulated and given functions in the cosmos. Then we're going to go automatically. We see the creation of man. We see the man and Adam and Eve put in the garden, which is another micro temple. It's a microcosm of the temple, which the garden is. So they get put into the garden, put into the micro temple. We have the fall of man coming up next. Then by the time we get to the end of the beginning of chapter 6, beginning with next week's Torah portion, we see that Yah is already ready to wipe out all of creation and start again with just Noah and his family after the flood. It's absolutely amazing how much of this Torah portion makes so much more sense. It's absolutely amazing, because if we can understand it from how they perceived it and how they understood their own environment, it's all going to make sense. So now let's do some defining some terms, giving you some definitions very quickly. This is from the Ancient Bible Dictionary of Cosmogony and Cosmology. Okay, the theory and lore concerning the origin and the structure of the universe. Cosmogony and cosmology are both terms whose etymologies remain helpful in defining them for the purposes of discussing their place in biblical thought. The first element in both words is obviously the same Greek word that lies behind the English cosmos, and thus refers to the entire universe as an organized entity. A cosmogony, cosmos plus genia, is thus an account usually in the form of a mythological tale about the genesis or birth of the structured universe. A cosmology, cosmos plus logia, equals a report. It is a blueprint or a map in the widest sense of the universe as a comprehensive and meaningful place. Now, so this gives us a little bit of a definition of what cosmos means and how cosmogony and cosmology were defined in the ancient world. Okay? Continuing on in the Ancient Bible Dictionary, cosmogony and cosmology. Occasionally, scholars have maintained that it is important to make a firm separation between these two terms. A separation between cosmogony on the one hand as a mythical account of the origin events that produced an ordered universe, and cosmology on the other hand as speculation about meaning and value in the universe in the most general sense, and even in the absence of any mention of originating events. Though such a terminological division may be useful in discussing non-biblical religions, the fact is that the locus of almost all cosmological thought in the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament is in cosmogonic texts. Hence, the two terms have traditionally been used almost interchangeably in discussions of early Judaism and Christianity. What does that mean? Basically, what it means is that cosmogony and cosmology is they wanted to know how the universe came into existence, what was the form of it coming into existence, not necessarily its material origins, but how did it come into existence and who ran it? Okay, those were the two questions. This is what all of the ancient Near Eastern mindsets were centered around. Okay, and we're going to see, if you go, and I'm not going to have time to go through all these texts, but we're going to flip through them real quickly, is if you go through the ancient Egyptian text, the ancient Egyptian text has a plethora of creation, mythical texts that have been written, and you can go through and see the various beliefs of how they understood it. There's also ones in Mesopotamia. There's also ones in Babylon. Egypt, again, like I said, you're not going to have time to go through all of these because I want to make sure that we're getting as much context as we can in this hour. Okay, so please, if you have time, get these resources. There's plenty of articles that you can research online and begin to investigate. Even if you have the Ancient Near Eastern text by Pritchard, there's a lot of these creation texts that are in there that you can see how these nations believed and how they thought that the universe and the cosmos came into existence, and who they believed ran that cosmos, who it was that was the king of the universe in their eyes. Okay, cosmos can be defined as a complex and ordered system such as our universe, the opposite of chaos. It is the universe regarded as an ordered system. This is the exact definition of cosmos. Is it stands for a ordered universe. Okay, anything outside of an ordered universe actually is the word chaos. Okay, now we're moving into the discussion of showing you that Genesis 1, 2, and 3 does not have anything to do with material origins, guys. They want to know what the function of the cosmos was and who it was that was setting up this macro temple and running the universe. Okay, What does the system of order represent? Cosmos equals order, and chaos, literally means disorder. Okay, now one of the amazing things about what the ancient Near Eastern people believed is that in some of those creation texts is that when you study them, you're going to see that some of them these people had these ideas that out of the midst of the chaotic waters, they saw the waters of the deep being an adversary, and out of this midst of the chaos amongst the gods and out of the chaotic waters, that's how things came into existence, and the gods formulated this functioning, ordered universe out of chaos. Now, one of the most impactful things that I've learned just by this topic alone is this one element of recognizing the difference and the distinction that Yah is making between how those people saw chaos and how we are to see chaos. Okay, we are the ones that have caused the chaos. We are the ones that have caused the cosmic fall, the downfall of mankind by creating sin. So chaos in the eyes of Yah is we're the ones that are committing it. Okay, He hasn't created anything out of chaos. And He hasn't fought amongst any other gods because there is no other gods. He is the one true Elohim. He is the one true King who has created all, given everything its function. And we are the ones, us, His creation, are the ones that have caused the chaos amongst the universe, amongst the macro temple, amongst the earthly tabernacle. Remember, everything that was done in committing sin in the earthly tabernacle was because we caused it. We caused some sort of chaos, which means we caused disorder. We caused disorder amongst an ordered structure that Yah established, and it needs to be repaired. So this is basically the whole plan that's going on right now throughout history. Is we have the macro temple being established, Yah giving everything its function, which we never did talk about the Bible being a complete temple text with Revelation, because remember, like we said earlier, it starts off with the temple and the cosmos in the very beginning, and at the very end in Revelation, it's showing how the cosmic temple has been restored, and we are all living back into a restored, ordered state, us as humanity, mankind being restored back in Yah's eyes as part of His creation. So the whole Bible is a temple text. This is how it is meant to be seen. Everything in between those two bookends of the cosmic temple in Genesis 1 and the cosmic temple in the book of Revelation is showing how us as mankind, as humanity, and everything that He has created, what our function is within that temple of Yah in the cosmos. Is this making sense? It's absolutely mind-boggling when we return to the text and we look at everything, especially from Elohim's point of view of everything being linked to both temples. Okay, remember, unfortunately, Judaism is they've taken everything pertaining to the earthly temple, and it seems like everything focuses around the earthly temple. And even though within some sects of Judaism, as they talk about the cosmic temple and how things are affected in the heavenly realm, but it's not prevalent. Okay, and then you have Christianity on the other side, who they only want to have this warm, fuzzy feeling about how everything is mystical, okay, and there's no earthly temple. They do away with the earthly temple. But unfortunately, they can't seem to make the connection that's just not that. We have to be the ones who share with them that the earthly tabernacle is a microcosm of the heavenly temple. And those two they're connected, okay? Remember, we're not only dealing with a physical world with you and I in it and doing our five senses of a mentality of how we perceive things. There's a whole metaphysical realm that we can't see, that we're not connected to literally in our five senses. So we have to be able to see how these things are connected. Look beyond our five sense mentality. So when we do that, all of these areas of the temple are going to make sense. The work of Yeshua is going to make sense. Yours and mine functions on what we're supposed to be doing in this whole scheme of things. The whole pattern of Yah's temple is all going to make sense. Now, because remember, it says all throughout Scripture, it says it in Exodus, it talks about it in the Brit Hadashah, in Hebrews, in the book of Acts, in the book of Numbers, on how the pattern of the earthly temple was given to Moshe the same as what? It was a pattern of what he saw in the heavenly realm. Okay, we see this in the book of Ezekiel. The last 5 chapters of Ezekiel is all dealing with the restoration of the coming temple. Okay? So, with that being said, we have to begin to look at the Bible as a complete temple text. When we do that, everything makes sense. Okay. We're going to skip that slide. But really quickly, the ancient Egyptians, and we talked a little bit about the concept of Ma'at, which Ma'at was establishing perfect order in the eyes of the Egyptians. Everything that the Egyptians did was based off of a ordered universe, which they believed that their deities, and the Pharaoh was connected to all that. We know that. But it was about them keeping order. And everything that they did was supposed to be a life of maintaining order. Now, just keep that in the back of your mind, because when we're talking about cosmos, which is ordered universe, and we know that chaos equals disorder, we're going to be able to see how these things make sense. Now, we're not going to be able to talk a little bit as much as I want on cosmic geography, but the eyes of the ancient Near Eastern people all had an idea that there was a geography involved. Yah wasn't trying to tell them, hey, the earth isn't flat like you think it is. It wasn't they all had an idea of how the geography of the cosmos was set up. He wasn't trying to change that. They all had a belief that there was a flat earth, that there was the expanse holding back the waters of the cosmic waters. There was cosmic trees. The cosmic mountains being the intersecting between the cosmos and the earth. Now that one is absolutely huge, and we could talk about all of these if we had enough time, but we're going to talk about all of them in the full series on this. But just to make mention quickly of the cosmic mountain, because we're going to see it again in next week's Torah portion with Noah. Well, I don't know if it's in next week's or the week after. But what the cosmic mountain is let me see if I can show you a picture. This one doesn't have the mountain in it, but we'll go to the ziggurat. This is a slide that I found from another gentleman who talks about cosmology. It's specifically centered around ziggurats, and he says, a manifestation of ancient Near Eastern cosmology, the earth was a disk of land which surrounded by a saltwater ocean, both of which floated on another sea of fresh water called Apsu. Above was a solid dome firmament, stars fixed on it. A world mountain formed an axis mundi that joined all 3 layers. So what they believed is that when the earth came into existence out of the cosmic waters and in the midst of the gods fighting amongst each other, there was a mountain that rose up. Okay, and on that mountain was the intersecting point between the cosmic temple of the deity and the earth. This is why they built ziggurats, and they thought that if they built this ziggurat on the mountain, that's when the gods would come down and they would meet with them. This is nothing new to the Israelites. Everybody had this belief, okay? So is they using something pagan? No. Remember, Yah is using everything He can to show every person that He has created on this planet that He is the one who created everything and gave everything His function. Okay? He is the one who deserves the honor, and which He's already acquired for Himself through the mighty acts that He's done. So the cosmic mountain ties into so many different places. Okay, it ties into the garden. The Garden of Eden, it has a belief that it was attached to a mountain. Okay, the Mount Ararat, which we're going to see where Noah, after the flood, Yah wipes everybody out on the earth except for Noah and his family. Where does the boat end up? The boat ends up on Mount Ararat, a cosmic mountain. Noah walks off the boat and immediately establishes the authority of Yahweh on the earth by setting up an altar and doing offerings to it. That is the whole purpose of those verses that we're going to see, where he gets off on the mountain and rededicates the sovereignty of the earth to Yah. We also see it to Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai, when the children of Israel received the commandments and Yah speaks with them there. The cosmic mountain. It's the intersecting point of Yah coming down out of the cosmos and meeting with His creation. We also see it on the Temple Mount, obviously with the temple being there. The Mount of Olives. When Yeshua it comes back on the earth and He sets foot on the Mount of Olives, it is because His authority is coming there. Okay. We also saw it when He was put on the stake. And His authority was where Yeshua was. Remember? So we see all these different areas of cosmic geography, but He wasn't trying to set their mindset straight on the earth being flat or any of those things. He was working within a culture and within an environment so they knew how to understand what He was doing and how He is the one who did it, not the other gods. Okay? I'm trying to skim through their slides so we can hurry up and jump through and get to the text. All right, now we're going to analyze the text the best that we can with the 30 minutes or so that we have left. Okay? Genesis 1:1. We're actually going to discuss the word and the phrase "in the beginning," because, like I said earlier, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's very, very hard and very, very difficult, and this is why it's taken me so long to put out any teachings on this, because there's so much information and there's so much of a mindset that we have to overcome from what we've been taught. Remember, we're not discussing material origins in the book of Genesis. It was never meant to be about material origins. This is not how the ancient people believed. Okay? We got to place ourselves within the culture and within the text. Okay? It doesn't have anything to do with modern day Christianity versus evolutionism. The people didn't want to know what rocks were made out of. They didn't want to know what was the substance of H2O. They understood that there was a creator. They wanted to know what the function of his cosmos was, what the functions of those things were. And all throughout Genesis 1 and 2, as we see that Yah is not talking about the form or the material substance in which he has created things. That's not how the definition of create is understood in the ancient world. And we're going to talk about the actual definition of create, bara, how they understood it here very shortly. So the word beginning in Scripture in other ancient Near Eastern texts is used typically to introduce a period of time rather than a point of time. The phrase in the beginning. So we see that in the very first verse, in the beginning Elohim created the heavens and the earth. And we also see this type of phrase used in Job chapter 8 verse 7, speaking at the beginning of Job's life. It's not talking about the very beginning of time. It's not talking about the material origin of Job or anything like that. We also see it in Jeremiah 28:1 at the beginning of Zedekiah's reign. Okay? The Lost World of Genesis 1. On page 43, John Walton says this. This usage of in the beginning happens to correspond with ideas that are reflected in ancient Near Eastern creation texts. The Egyptian texts refer to the first occasion, which implies the first occurrence of an event that is to be repeated or continued. In Akkadian creation text, the comparable term to the Hebrew refers to the first part or first installment. Okay? All of this information leads us to conclude that the beginning is a way of talking about the 7-day period rather than a point in time prior to the 7 days. So here he's not saying at the very beginning. He's talking about the first occasion. We're establishing the first 7 days for a specific purpose. Okay, we're going to see how even the 7 days are attached to the cosmic temple and the earthly temple. Because remember, how many days did it take for the temple to be dedicated? 7. Same with the altar. The same with the Kohanim. Everything was supposed to be dedicated for 7 days. This is where we have Hanukkah, the dedication. The temple is to be dedicated and inaugurated. It's an inauguration ceremony for 7 days. This is exactly what's happening in Genesis chapter 1 and in the beginning of chapter 2 with the 7th day. Is this making sense? Trust me, it's all going to become so much more clear as we get through this. If the beginning refers to the 7-day period rather than to a point in time before the 7-day period, then we would conclude that the first verse does not record a separate act of creation that occurred prior to the 7 days, but that in fact the creation that it refers to is recounted in the 7 days. This suggests that the verse 1 serves as a literary introduction to the rest of the chapter. Now you're going to notice immediately in verse 2, we see that physical matter is already present. So we have the earth was formless and void. So we can see that it's not necessarily talking about material origins because we already have the earth. We already have material substance. It's not talking about poof and then the earth was created, and it's talking about the material. It's not talking about earth being the dirt, the rock, the water, all of the various chemicals that make up the earth. It doesn't have anything to do with that. Okay, and then we also see the cosmic waters and the earth as tohu and bohu. We're not going to be able to talk about those terms either. But And we see the cosmic waters we already have water being in the text. So we have to analyze the text for what it is, ladies and gentlemen, not saying that and making up ideas to say that what the text is not saying. Okay, we can't make it say what it doesn't say. So this has to do with the role of verse 1 is understanding what the phrase in the beginning means. Okay? Now, the word create, we're going to move, we're in the same verse 1. We hadn't even left verse 1. We've been talking for 35, 40 minutes, just setting a basic foundation. We haven't even been able to get into as much of a foundation as I want to. But the word create in the ancient world did not have anything to do with the physical properties in which something was created. It is the word for create, obviously in the Hebrew is bara. So what does this term mean in the ancient Near Eastern worldview? Remember that all the ancient Near Eastern nations and their cosmologies involved a creator. We're not inserting modern day Christianity versus evolution type theories into this text. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to be able to set that aside. If somebody wants to debate as far as an evolution standpoint, fine. Go ahead. But the original intention in the context of Genesis doesn't have anything to do with that. If somebody wants to debate that, that's fine. But we have to also, if we're going to explain that He is the Creator and He is the one who actually created these physical things, then we have to also show them that what is the purpose of this text? Why is it written the way that it's written? It's written in a way so that we can see what the functions are, not the form. Okay? Now, moving on. The word create. Now, we didn't get to talk about ontology. Let me see if I can find the ontology slide really quickly so we could talk a little bit about that. Like I said, this is a huge PowerPoint, guys, and there's just not enough time to be able to go through. Bear with me here. Anyway, I can't find the slide right now, but basically what ontology is what does it mean for something to exist? Okay, what did it mean to them? Okay, for something to exist. Like we could take this laptop that I'm using, for example, and we could talk about all the physical properties that make up this literal laptop that I'm using. Okay, we can use this with, you can pick any object and use this as an example. So, but what is the ontology? What does it mean for this thing to exist? What makes this thing a laptop? Okay, it doesn't become a laptop just because of its physical properties. If it doesn't function the way that it was designed to, it's just going to be a bunch of plastic and a bunch of metal parts and junk. You know, wires and cables that mean absolutely nothing to me. It will serve me no purpose. But because it's set up to have a function, not just a form, okay, it exists, it was created for us to have a purpose, to have a function. And when I plug this thing in, I turn it on, the software works, everything works the way that it was designed to, and it serves me as a purpose in order to present everything to you as far as this teaching goes, then it is showing that it has a purpose for its existence. Does that make sense? This is how people perceive the cosmos. They wanted to know what its function was. Who was the God that was running that cosmos? Because they all knew that the cosmos was set up to be a temple. But how did that temple function? What was the ontology? What does it mean for that cosmological temple to exist? Does it make sense? To me, it makes perfect sense. Okay. So in the ancient world, something existed when it had a function or a role to play. All the ancient Near Eastern cultures believe that there was a pre-creation condition of non-functionality characterized by water, which we talked a little bit about this. Water and darkness, which was remedied by creative acts that assign functions by giving names, separating, and bringing functional order to the cosmos. This is a verse or a text comment from the Zondervan Bible Background Commentary. So we see there's three things that were assigned to when something was created. By giving it a name, which we see in Genesis 1 here. Number 2 was the act of separating something. So we had to see something separated from something else. And then giving a function, giving it a purpose. And we see all of this is attached to Genesis chapter 1. Okay? I think we're moving along pretty good. We've got a few minutes left. In the Old Testament, Elohim has no needs and focuses functionality around people. We will see increasing evidence of this understanding as we move through the remainder of Genesis 1. Consequently, functioning cannot exist without people in the picture. In Genesis, people are not put in place until day 6, but functionality is established with their needs and situation in mind. This conclusion is further supported by the meaning of the repeated formula, "it was good." Now, if you go through and you look at all of the phrases, or all of the times that of it being good in Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2, we're seeing that when he says that something is good, he's saying that he has given it a function and a purpose. And he moves on and he goes through. Let's begin to read the text, because we only have about 15 or 20 minutes left. And I want to be able to get as much of this in as I can. Okay? And we'll kind of talk about Genesis 1 and the beginning of chapter 2 as we go through here. But please, ladies and gentlemen, begin to investigate this from its proper context and recognizing that this whole chapters 1 through 3 is about Yah establishing His macro temple. Okay? And centering it around the human condition and what our purpose is and our function is within His macro temple. Okay, remember, Israel is supposed to be what? They were supposed to be kings and priests that went to all of the nations of the world and carried out the justice and righteousness and the honor of Yahweh throughout all of the earth. That's our function. That is our purpose in the macro temple of Yahweh in the cosmos. And if we can't get that right, then we're not being utilized and doing what we are created for. Remember, we were named, we were separated from the earth because He created us out of the dust, and He gave us a function. Okay, but if all we're doing is going around creating chaos and creating disorder in a system that is trying to be restored right now, then we need to step out of the way. Okay, so let's go ahead and read through the text with the time that we have left. In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth. It's not talking about the material origin. Okay, He gave them a name. He's giving them a function. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, the cosmic waters. The Spirit of Elohim was hovering over the waters. And Elohim said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Elohim saw that the light was good, and He separated the light from the darkness. So here we have the light is being separated. Okay? Now He's about to call the light what? He's about to give it a name. So Elohim called the light day, and the darkness He called night. So He gives day and night names. He separates them from each other. He separates the light from the darkness, and He gives them a name. He's giving them a purpose. And Elohim said, "Let there be..." I forgot. In the darkness He called night, and there was evening, and there was morning the first day. And Elohim said, "Let there be expanse between the waters, and separate them from the water from water." So Elohim made the expanse, and separated the water under the expanse from the water above it. And it was so. Elohim called the expanse sky. And there was evening, and there was morning, day 2. So we see that He separated the expanse, and He's created the sky and left the waters in the ocean. See how the act of creation is different from talking about its material origins or its physical properties? It's not what was intended by the text. Verse 9, and Elohim said, "Let the water in the sky be gathered to one place, and let the dry ground appear." And it was so. So He called the dry ground land. And to gather the waters He called seas. And Elohim saw that it was good. And Elohim said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land, and bear fruit with seed in it according to the various kinds." And it was so. The land produced vegetations, plants bearing seed according to their kinds, and trees bearing fruit and seed according to their kinds. And Elohim saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And Elohim said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the sky, and separate from the day from the night. And let them serve as signs to mark seasons, days and years." So He's giving all of these things, the lights in the sky, He's giving them a purpose. He's not talking about, well, I'm going to create the moon out of this H2O and all of these other elements and giving it a material origin definition. Nope. He's giving them a function. Because they are to serve as a mark of seasons and days and years. And let them be lights in the expanse in the sky to give light on the earth. And it was so. Elohim made 2 great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night. And he also made the stars. God set them up in the expanse in the sky to give the light on earth, to govern the day and the night, and to separate light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning the 4th day. And Elohim said, let the water teem from the living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth across in the expanse of the sky. So Elohim created the great creatures of the sea and every living and moving thing which the water teems, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And Elohim saw that it was good. Elohim blessed them and said, be fruitful and increase in number and fill the water in the seas. And let the birds increase on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning the 5th day. And Elohim said, let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock creatures according to moving along the ground, and the wild animals each according to its kind. And it was so. Elohim made the wild animals according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures to move along the ground according to their kinds. And Elohim saw that it was good. Then Elohim said, let us make man in our image, our own image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish in the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over the earth, over all the creatures that moving along the ground. So Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim he created him. Male and female he created them. Elohim saw them and blessed them and said, be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over it. So it's giving humanity its function. Rule over the fish in the sea, the birds of the air, and every living creature, and moves on the ground. Then Elohim said, I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth, and all the birds of the air, all the creatures that move on the ground, everything that has breath of life in it. I give every green plant for food. And it was so. Elohim saw that all he had made, and it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning the 6th day. Now, the word good, I want to make sure that I mention that there's a 7-fold formula of why he says it was good in here. Okay, and we see this in Genesis 1:4, Genesis 1:10, Genesis 1:12, Genesis 1:18, Genesis 1:21, and Genesis 1:25, where he says 6 times up to right now, and we go into verse 31, where he says that Elohim saw that it was all that he had made, and he saw it was very good. It was tov meod. Okay? And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning the 6th day. Now remember that he's creating all these things, and he's giving everything a function within the 6 days, because on the 7th day, what are temples created for? They were created to give the deity rest. Okay? This is what temples were created for. For the king to take his residence in his temple, to be worshipped by the people, and to take rest there. Okay, but it's not like take a rest like you and I think, or it was to take a nap. Okay, we're talking about a mindset of when the king takes residence in his temple, he takes his throne in order to rule what he has created, to rule his kingdom. We're talking about an ordered, structured kingdom. Okay, the cosmos is meant to be looked at as a kingdom. So we see that this takes the pattern of the 7-day inauguration ceremony for the temple. Everything is being established and set aside, dedicated in the first 6 days, like we see in Genesis 1, and especially where it says the formula of it is good. And then we see in the 7th, it says very good. It says tov meod. The cosmic creation in the ancient world is not viewed primarily as a process by which matter was brought into being, but as a process by which functions, roles, order, jurisdiction, organization, and stability are established. We're going to have Yahweh is about to take his residence on his throne in day 7 and rule the cosmos. Everything in which he has given a function, he is about to rule it. So the cosmos can now be recognized as it was in the eyes of the ancient world, an ordered, functioning kingdom. Okay, and we're just seeing just a very few of the intrinsic elements, ladies and gentlemen, tied to Genesis 1, 2, and 3. And I wish we had enough time to go through everything. But we just don't. But just by seeing the 7-fold formula and seeing that it is attached to the temple, not only on how things were done on the earth by consecrating and dedicating everything in the temple for 7 days, but he's doing it in the macro temple. It was established there first. Remember, everything that I showed Moshe, make it like this. That's what Yah says. This is why they do things the way they do. That's why the text is written this way. It has nothing to do with material or physical properties. Okay? Okay, so with days 1 through 3, we see that he's establishing functions, but days 4 through 6 are establishing the functionaries within them. So he's creating those things, but he's giving everything the functions. Okay, so he's establishing the functionaries like the stars, the moon, and all those things. He's telling us what those are, and then he's telling us what the functions are of those things. Okay, we'll skip that slide really quickly because we're running out of time. Divine rest is what day 7 is, like we talked about. Genesis 2, 1 through 2 says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were completed in all their array. And on the 7th day Elohim completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made," which he had given functions. He's created, he's established all of the forms, he's given all of the functions to his cosmic temple according to all of his creation, including humanity, and he is about to take residence on his throne. This is what is meant by this in the eyes of those people. This is how it was viewed. It wasn't about the God just taking a nap and checking out for a day. It's not what it meant. Okay, remember, we have to begin to look at the cosmos as a functioning kingdom, and that cosmos includes you and I. It includes the earth. Okay, this is not some mystical being that is just floating around. There's much, much more to it. And I'm hoping that after we talked about this, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting a basic foundation of ancient cosmology in Yah's macro temple, is that we will have a sense of him being a lot closer and not being so far away, and not just we're hoping that he's there, but we know that he exists, and we know that everything is tied together, and we know that if everything has a purpose and a function, then we can have confidence in knowing that he's hearing our prayers and he's close to us. Okay, and this all makes the understanding Yeshua so much more clear, because remember, we are the ones who caused the chaos in the macro temple. We're the ones who caused the chaos in the universe and have changed the cosmos from being an ordered universe to being one that is out in disorder. Okay, this is why we see things on the earth that are out of order. We see the earthquakes, we see volcanoes, we see storms, we see wars, we see people fighting, and we see murder, we see all sorts of death. We see Hasatan is running rampant right now on this planet, but Yah has allowed him to have this authority because you and I are the ones who have caused the chaos. So he has to use the chaos that is amongst us in order to draw us closer to him. Okay, for our own well-being and for us to be able to recognize what he's doing and to recognize why he sent Yeshua to remove the stain from the macro temple that we have caused, to restore the perfect order of Yah's kingdom. That's the purpose of Yeshua coming, to restore the perfect order of the universe. This is what Paul is talking about in 1 Corinthians, where after the millennial kingdom, we go through this kingdom of Yeshua ruling and reigning on the earth in the authority of Yah and the authority of the Father, and after the millennial kingdom is he takes the perfect ordered universe and hands it back over to the Father, because everything has been made new again, and the macro temple has been restored, all of humanity's function has been restored, and so on and so forth. Okay, this is how we need to begin to look at Genesis 1, and we're out of time, but I'm hoping that a lot of this made sense. But we have to begin to look at Genesis 1, 2, and 3 as a temple text within itself. The whole Bible is a temple text, yes, but we have to be able to recognize what the text actually says and not creating these ideas that we've been taught, and we don't have time to do that anymore, ladies and gentlemen. We have to look at it from how it was perceived in the culture. Remember, the message of covenant transcends culture. That transcends. It's good for us. It's valid for us. But if we're trying to understand a covenant in our own culture today in the 21st century, in the year 2014, and we're going to try to implement, well, this is what it means to me, It doesn't make sense. We'll be wandering around in just in a world of chaos and a cloud of chaos until Messiah returns. So the form of that covenant is culture bound. Okay, I'm sorry. This is where I am at now. We cannot go out of context anymore. We've been saying this for 2+ years now, and I understand that most of us are grasping that. But, ladies and gentlemen, I still see people who are attacking me almost every time I share something on Facebook, especially when it comes to do with context. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to go return to the culture because this is where it was written to a specific people. Okay? Now you and I have a mandate to understand that. How are we going to understand anything the Bible says? Anything, if we don't realize that it was written to a specific people, and it was not written to us. It's written for us, but it's not written to us. So, with that being said, I think we're going to have to leave it here. I'm extremely, extremely grateful for everybody at Wisdom and Torah Ministries, for Rico, for Ryan, for Victor, for everybody that has allowed me any opportunity to share with you guys over the last 3 years now. This is our 3rd Torah cycle, and it has been an amazing ride. And I'm extremely, extremely excited to see what Yah is going to do with us and showing us His Word and His ways this year. So I encourage you guys to please stick with us. Give us the hour each week. And we're going to be doing some additional teachings along with the Torah cycles like we always do. So we have a lot of exciting things planned for this year. So please visit us and join us. And I like I said, we'll be reposting this entire teaching once it gets done. We'll probably end up doing it an hour by hour. Like I said, there's 80 slides, and this is easily 6 hours in itself. I'll be teaching it for 4 hours next week, and hopefully I can get all the information squeezed into 4 hours. But anyway, thank you for joining me at the beginning of this year's 2014-2015 tour cycle, and we'll see you again in a few weeks. Come back next week. I think Rico is up in the tour portion next week. So till then, Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi chamocha